Hiroshima, August 6th, 1945, 7:30 a.m. You wouldn't have noticed anything unusual about the morning at first. The sun rises, as it always does over Hiroshima, casting long shadows across wooden houses and narrow streets. You wake with the heaviness that accompanies summer heat, your sleeping mat already warm beneath you. The cicadas have been humming since before dawn, their persistent drone, the background music to every August morning you can remember. Your movements are unhurried, deliberate. There is no reason to rush today. The tatami mats feel rough beneath your bare feet as you rise. Your home is modest, but adequate. A small structure that has sheltered your family through seasons of cherry blossoms and seasons of snow. The wooden beams above your head have darkened with years of cooking smoke, and the paper screens glow with diffused sunlight. You slide open the door to let in what little breeze might be available. The air outside sits still, unusually heavy, as though the world were holding its breath. You prepare rice that had been soaking overnight, your hands following patterns they have known for decades. Steam rises from the pot, clouding the small window that faces east, toward the center of the city. You could navigate this kitchen with your eyes closed. Every pot, every utensil has its place, a necessity in a space so small, in a city where homes press together like pages in a book. Children's voices drift in from the street. They are playing despite the heat, their laughter punctuated by the clink of steel on steel as neighbors prepare their own breakfasts. A dog barks somewhere in the distance. The Shinto River murmurs its constant conversation with the city, carrying whispers of mountain snowmelt toward the waiting sea. 7 bridges span its width, connecting the districts of Hiroshima like stitches in cloth. From your doorway, you can see one of them, already busy with bicycle traffic and pedestrians. Your hands dip into a basin of water, the coolness a momentary relief from the August heat. The water is precious. You carried it from the communal pump yesterday evening, when the worst of the day's heat had begun to subside. The surface ripples with your movements, catching light, throwing it against the wall in wavering patterns. In the streets, women are already sweeping entrances. Men are already heading to work in the factories, the shops, the offices. The city has awakened fully now. You dress simply, cotton yukata for the heat, worn thin from many washings. See, there is a war on, after all, and new fabric is hard to come by. You fold the sleeping mats and store them in the closet, sliding the door shut with a soft thump. The neighbors can be heard through the thin walls, a child being scolded, rice bowls clinking, the rustle of newspaper pages turning. Privacy is a luxury few in Hiroshima can afford, but there is comfort in these communal sounds, in knowing you are not alone. The radio sits silent in the corner. Usually you would listen to the morning announcements, the war reports, but electricity has been unreliable lately. Besides, the news is rarely good. Instead, you hear the more immediate bulletins of your neighborhood, an old man coughing next door, the squeak of a well pump being worked, the soft sweep of bamboo brooms on stone steps. For a moment you listen to these ordinary symphonies, not knowing they will soon be silenced forever. You step outside fully now, sliding the door closed behind you. The street is narrow, barely wide enough for a small cart. Houses and shops line both sides, wooden structures built close together. Most are single-story, with a few 2-story buildings rising like islands in a wooden sea. Telephone poles carry wires in a black web above the street, connecting home to home, district to district. Laundry hangs from bamboo poles, uniforms and undergarments alike, fluttering in what little breeze manages to find its way between buildings. There have been air raid sirens before. Of course, they have become as much a part of daily life as the temple bells, the factory whistles, the school children singing morning exercises. Just yesterday, a single B-29 flew overhead, but no bombs fell, just reconnaissance. Everyone said, breathing relief, but keeping one eye on the sky. This morning, another siren wailed briefly, but it was called off. All clear, no danger. You barely registered it, the way one stops hearing the ticking of a familiar clock. The air feels different today though, heavier, quieter. Even the birds seem to sense it, their morning songs more sporadic, tentative. You attribute this to the heat, to the weight of humidity that presses down on everything. August has always been difficult in Hiroshima, the mountains to the north and west trapping the heat like a lid on a cooking pot. You fan yourself slowly, considering whether to walk to the market now or wait until evening. Your neighbor's child runs past, a wooden toy clutched in small hands. You nod to the mother, who bows slightly in return. Her husband has been gone for 2 years, fighting somewhere in the Pacific. She does not speak of him often. None of you speak much of the absent men, as though silence might somehow protect them from harm. The child disappears around a corner, sandals slapping against dirt, leaving behind the echo of laughter. The vegetable garden behind your house needs water. The cucumbers are thriving, their prickly vines climbing the bamboo trellis you constructed in spring. Eggplants hang like purple teardrops among dusty leaves. You have become quite skilled at coaxing food from this small plot of earth. Necessity has made gardeners of everyone, with access to even the smallest patch of soil. You carry water in a wooden bucket, bending to pour it carefully at the base of each plant. The earth drinks greedily, darkening to rich brown before your eyes. In the distance, factory whistles pierce the morning calm. Men and women are already at work, manufacturing parts for the war effort. Hiroshima is an industrial center, an army base, a port city. Military headquarters occupy the imposing concrete building near the center of town. Soldiers in uniform are a common sight on the streets, in the streetcars, at the noodle shops. They seem so young to you now, their faces smooth and serious beneath their caps. A neighbor's radio crackles to life. They are one of the fortunate few with consistent electricity. The announcer's voice drifts through open windows, speaking of distant battles, of national spirit, of sacrifice. You listen without truly hearing, your hands continuing their work in the garden. These words have become wallpaper, always present, rarely noticed. Besides, today seems too ordinary for great events. The sun continues its climb into a sky of perfect, unmarred blue. No clouds, not even a wisp of white to interrupt that endless azure expanse. You stand and stretch your back, feeling the small complaints of aging vertebrae. From this vantage point, you can see the city spreading around you, the tiled roofs creating a patchwork of gray and brown that extends to the hills. Hiroshima occupies a fan-shaped delta, the 6 branches of the river, dividing it into islands connected by bridges. From above, it must look like a hand reaching from the mountains toward the inland sea, fingers of land separated by ribbons of water. The postman cycles past, nodding as he goes. He brings fewer letters these days. Paper is rationed, like everything else. Still, you check your small mailbox, mounted beside the door. Empty today. You try not to worry about your son, stationed somewhere so distant that his letters, when they do arrive, are weeks old before they reach your hands. You touch the wooden frame of the mailbox briefly before turning away. Better to occupy yourself with immediate tasks than to dwell on absences you cannot fill. You decide to walk to the market after all. The shopping bag, woven from rice straw that has grown brittle with age, hangs by the door. You take it, feeling the familiar texture against your palm. Money is tucked into a small pocket, sewn into your obi. Not much. Everything is expensive now, and ration coupons determine what you can purchase more than currency does. Still, there is comfort in routine, in the familiar walk past the shrine, down the street where the old man sells charcoal, across the small stone bridge that spans the canal. The air remains still as you walk. No breeze stirs the leaves of the ginkgo trees that line the wider streets. Sweat forms at your temples, at the back of your neck, but you ignore it. Everyone is sweating in Hiroshima today. Children squat near a puddle left from last night's brief shower, poking at it with sticks. They look up as you pass, bowing slightly before returning to their game. Their voices fade behind you. Near the market, you pass a group of women and children clearing a firebreak. Buildings are being demolished throughout the city, creating wide swaths of open ground, meant to prevent the spread of fire should incendiary bombs fall. The work is difficult. Wooden beams being pulled down, walls dismantled, the debris carried away in handcarts and on backs. Even elderly women participate, their white headscarves stark against the dust and dirt. You nod respectfully as you pass. Perhaps tomorrow you will join them. Today the garden needed tending. The market is smaller than it once was. Fewer stalls, fewer goods displayed. What remains is expensive, the produce often wilted from summer heat. Still, people gather here, exchanging news along with what little currency they have. You purchase daikon radish, a small amount of tofu, some greens, to supplement what your garden provides. The fishmonger has only a few small fish today, their silver sides dull, under the coating of salt meant to preserve them. You select one, watching as he wraps it in paper before placing it in your bag. Conversations swirl around you, talk of rations, of absent sons, of the strange plane that flew over yesterday. No one mentions surrender, though rumors have reached even Hiroshima that the war goes poorly. Such talk is dangerous. Besides, surrender is unthinkable. Better to focus on daily survival, on finding enough food, on keeping homes clean and children fed. The grand movements of empires and armies seem distant from these market stalls, these neighborhood streets. You stop at the shrine on your way home, clapping your hands softly before bowing your head. Your prayer is simple, the same one you have offered every day since your son departed. Keep him safe, bring him home. The shrine is small, neighborhood-sized, with stone lanterns flanking the entrance and a red torii gate, marking the transition from mundane to sacred space. Incense smoke hangs in the still air, adding its fragrance to the summer heat. A clock in the commercial district strikes 8:15 as you turn toward home. The sound reaches you faintly, carried on the heavy air. 8:15. An ordinary time on what seems an ordinary day. You adjust your grip on the shopping bag, feeling the weight of the daikon, the fish, the greens. Your thoughts are already turning to preparation, to the slicing and chopping that will occupy your hands while your mind wanders. The sky remains impossibly blue above you, unmarred by cloud or vapor trail. Birds skim low over the canal, their wings creating ripples in the still surface of the water. A streetcar clangs in the distance, carrying workers and shoppers along iron tracks that have served the city for decades. Everything is as it should be. Everything is normal. Even the distant drone of an airplane engine doesn't concern you. Just another reconnaissance flight, you assume. They come and go, These American planes, taking photographs, gathering information. Sometimes the air raid sirens sound, but often they do not. This morning's brief warning has already been forgotten. The plane is too high to see clearly, just a silver gleam against the blue. You don't bother looking up. Your attention is focused on the ground, on the path home, on the weight of the shopping bag growing heavier with each step in the August heat. You pass women drawing water from a public pump, their movements unhurried, their conversation a soft murmur beneath the splash of water against buckets. You don't know that the plane above you is named for the pilot's mother. You don't know that it carries a single bomb in its belly, a bomb unlike any ever used in warfare before. You don't know that in this moment, as you walk home with daikon and fish, with tofu and greens, history balances on a knife's edge above your head. You are simply a person, walking home on a hot August morning, thinking about lunch preparation, about watering the garden again in the evening, about the letter you hope might arrive from your son tomorrow. The air grows even heavier. If possible, the cicadas fall silent suddenly, as though someone has thrown a switch. You notice this absence of sound more than you notice their presence. It's unusual, this silence, but not alarming. Perhaps a cat is stalking nearby, or perhaps the heat has even exhausted the tireless insects. You continue walking. Home is not far now. You can see the corner where you'll turn, the electrical pole with its transformer box, the stone lantern that some long ago neighbor placed beside the road. The clock in the distance finishes striking 8:15. The last note hangs in the air, vibrating like the surface of a drum, after the stick has fallen. And then, Hiroshima, August 6th, 1945, 8:15 a.m. The light comes first, not light as you have ever known it, not sunlight filtered through paper screens, not firelight dancing on walls, not the soft glow of lanterns along evening streets. This is light that erases the concept of light itself, that redefines brightness in terms your mind cannot comprehend. It is as though the sun has descended to earth, has chosen Hiroshima as its resting place, has decided to press its full, unfiltered radiance against your retinas. There is no sound at first. Sound requires time to travel, requires air molecules to vibrate against one another in waves that eventually reach your ears. But light is instantaneous. Light is now. This light, this impossible, unbearable light, reaches you the moment the bomb detonates 1,900 feet above the center of Hiroshima. Your shopping bag is still clutched in your fingers. Your foot is still in mid-step. Your thought about dinner preparation is still forming in your mind when the light changes everything. Your shadow stretches behind you, suddenly sharp-edged and dark. For a split second, it is the most defined your shadow has ever been, the line between light and absence of light drawn with supernatural precision. This is the last moment your shadow will ever look like you. In the next instant, the light intensifies beyond any reference point your consciousness can provide. Your eyes, designed for sunlight filtered through atmosphere, for moonlight reflected off water, for firelight dancing on walls, have no defense against this. The light is so bright that it penetrates closed eyelids, so bright that it photographs the blood vessels of your retinas onto your brain. Later, if you survive, you will see these ghost images floating in your vision, the tree of your own veins imprinted by atomic fire. But for now, there is only this moment of absolute, annihilating brightness. Time stretches, contracts. Your mind cannot process what your senses are reporting. Then comes the heat that makes August in Hiroshima seem like winter midnight. heat that instantly raises the temperature of your skin by 30 degrees, heat that doesn't burn so much as transform, converting matter from one state to another without intermediate steps. The water on your skin, sweat from the morning's walk, flash vaporizes. The moisture in your outer layer of skin does the same. This happens in microseconds, faster than nerve impulses can travel, faster than pain can register. You are approximately 1 mile from the hypocenter, what will later be called ground zero. At this distance, the thermal pulse delivers approximately 20 to 40 calories per square centimeter of skin surface, enough to cause third-degree burns instantly, enough to ignite clothing, enough to create the burns that will characterize so many survivors, the dark patterns of clothing seared into flesh, the ghostly outlines where a sleeve ended or a collar began. Your perception cannot keep pace with what is happening to your body. The light has blinded you temporarily. The heat wave has already done its damage before you can feel it. And still, the pressure wave, the actual blast, has not yet reached you. Sound travels at approximately 767 miles per hour at sea level. The pressure wave, though faster, still requires time to cross the distance from detonation to where you stand, shopping bag in hand, thoughts interrupted. Now it arrives, first as a wall of superheated air that pushes ahead of the pressure wave itself. This hot wind hits you at hundreds of miles per hour. Your clothes ripple, then shred. Your hair, if not already burned away by the thermal pulse, streams back from your face. The shopping bag is torn from your grasp. Its contents, the fish, the daikon, the tofu, the greens, becoming projectiles themselves, joining the storm of debris, now filling the air around you. The pressure wave itself is next, a sudden, crushing compression of air molecules, so violent that it feels solid. This is not wind. This is something for which human language has no adequate term. It is as though the sky itself has become a hammer, striking everything beneath it with equal, indiscriminate force. Windows don't merely break, they atomize into glittering clouds of glass shards that fly through the air like horizontal rain. Walls don't collapse, they explode outward. Roofs don't fall, they take flight. Your eardrums rupture instantly. The pressure differential between the outside world and the air-filled cavities of your middle ear is too great for the thin membranes to withstand. Blood trickles from your ears, joining the streams from your nose, from the corners of your eyes, where capillaries have burst. Your lungs suffer as well. The pressure wave compresses your chest, forces the air from your alveoli, damages the delicate tissue of air sacs and bronchioles. If you survive, you will cough blood for days. All of this happens in seconds. The light, the heat, the pressure, a trinity of destruction that transforms Hiroshima from a living city into something else entirely, something for which we still, decades later, struggle to find adequate descriptions. The closest approximation might be this. Imagine the moment of creation reversed. Imagine order collapsing instantaneously into chaos. Imagine everything solid becoming uncertain, everything known becoming unrecognizable. You are thrown backwards by the force of the blast. Your body, weighing perhaps 50 kilograms, offers no more resistance than a paper lantern in a typhoon. You have no control over your trajectory. Physics has taken over completely, has reduced you to an object with mass subject to forces. You collide with something, a wall still standing, perhaps, or the trunk of a tree, or another human being, similarly transformed into a projectile. The impact breaks ribs, perhaps your spine, perhaps your skull. You cannot feel these injuries yet. Your nervous system is overwhelmed. sending too many emergency signals for your brain to process. The world around you has changed completely in the span of perhaps 5 seconds. The streets you have walked all your life are unrecognizable. Buildings that have stood since your grandparents' time are gone or transformed into skeletal versions of themselves. People nearby have vanished or become things you will not allow yourself to fully see, even as your vision begins to return in patchy, distorted fragments. The mind protects itself from what the eyes report. The negative pressure phase follows the positive, a vacuum created in the wake of the compression wave that now pulls back toward the center with nearly equal force. Debris that was blown outward is now sucked inward, creating a deadly crossfire of projectiles. What remains of windows, walls, roof tiles, streetcars, bicycles, shop signs, and human bodies is lifted and hurled toward the epicenter. The air itself seems to be flowing backward, drawing smoke, dust, and flames toward a central point that grows darker by the second. You lie where you have fallen. The shopping bag is gone. The fish, the daikon, the tofu, the greens, all gone. The concerns about dinner preparation seem to belong to another lifetime, another world entirely. The sky above is no longer blue. It has become a roiling mass of gray and black, with strange flashes of red and orange reflecting off the underside of the rapidly forming mushroom cloud. Dust and smoke fill the air, reducing visibility to meters, then less. The sun is obscured. Darkness falls at 8:16 in the morning. Sound returns now, not the ordinary sounds of a city morning, but a cacophony that defies categorization. The roar of fires springing up everywhere as paper walls and wooden beams ignite. The crash of collapsing structures continuing to fail as damaged support members give way. The hiss of water pipes, broken underground, shooting geysers into the air. And beneath it all, beginning faintly but growing louder, human sounds, cries for help, moans of pain, calls for missing loved ones, names shouted into swirling dust. Mother, father, child, help me. Water, please. Your hearing is damaged by the pressure wave, so these sounds reach you as though through water or thick cloth, muffled, distant, unreal. Your vision too remains compromised. Partial blindness from the flash is compounded by the smoke and dust that now fill the air. What you can see makes little sense. Familiar landmarks gone, perspectives altered, scale distorted. A streetcar, lifted by the blast and dropped 100 meters from its tracks, rests improbably atop the remains of a noodle shop. A stone lantern from the shrine stands untouched amid total devastation, its granite surface blackened on one side. The ground beneath you is hot. The thermal pulse has ignited countless small fires that are rapidly joining to form larger ones. The wooden city of Hiroshima, with its paper screens and tatami mats, its wooden beams and tile roofs, has become perfect kindling for a firestorm. Already, the pattern is establishing itself, fire creating updrafts drawing in more oxygen feeding more fire. This cycle, once established, cannot be stopped. It will burn until there is nothing left to consume. You try to rise. Pain flares everywhere, sudden and overwhelming now that the initial shock is passing. Burns cover your exposed skin, face, hands, arms, legs, where your clothing was torn away. The burns are deep, penetrating to the dermis and beyond. They appear strangely bloodless. The heat has cauterized capillaries even as it destroyed tissue. Instead of red, your burns are char black in some places, waxy white in others where the deepest layers are exposed. Blisters are already forming, where burns are less severe, fluid filling the space between damaged dermis and epidermis. Your lungs burn with each breath. The superheated air of the initial blast has scalded your respiratory tract from the inside. Each inhalation draws in more smoke and dust, compounding the damage. Coughing brings up blood-tinged sputum. Your throat feels raw, as though you've swallowed broken glass. The air itself has become a poison, carrying particulate matter from vaporized concrete, from atomized glass, from incinerated wood and paper and flesh. All of this, the light, the heat, the pressure wave, the negative pressure, the initial fires, constitutes only the first minute after detonation. The subsequent minutes unfold with equal horror, equal disorientation. The world continues to transform around you in ways that defy comprehension. Fires spread with supernatural speed. Blackened paper, documents, letters, personal records, falls from the sky like macabre snow, carried upward by the mushroom cloud, and then dispersed by upper-level winds. Some of these fragments are still smoldering, adding more ignition points to the growing inferno. The dust begins to settle, revealing more of what the blast has done. At the epicenter, where the fireball touched the earth, the ground temperature reached approximately 7,000 degrees Celsius. Granite melted, concrete bubbled like liquid, metal infrastructure, water pipes, streetcar tracks, support beams, softened and bent into impossible shapes. Human beings closer to the center than you didn't burn. They vaporized, their bodies converted to gas and ash in milliseconds. Some left shadows on walls and steps, dark outlines where their bodies absorbed the thermal radiation, protecting the surface behind them momentarily before they ceased to exist. You see none of this directly. You are too far from the epicenter, and your vision is too compromised, but you see the effects radiating outward, a gradient of destruction that follows precise physics. Wooden buildings flattened by the pressure wave, concrete structures gutted but partially standing, steel girders bent like wire, trees stripped of leaves and bark, standing like blackened matchsticks, pointing away from the center, and everywhere, fire. Fire running along wooden beams, fire dancing in pools of spilled cooking oil, fire spreading from house to house, shop to shop, building to building. You manage to stand, swaying on legs that seem disconnected from your will. Your equilibrium is destroyed. The pressure wave has damaged your inner ear, disrupting the fluid-filled canals that provide your sense of balance. The world tilts and spins around you. You reach for support, a wall that is no longer there, a post that has fallen. Your hands, burned and blistering, register only pain when they contact anything solid. Still, you stand. Still, you try to orient yourself. Nothing is where it should be. The street you were walking on has disappeared, covered by debris, transformed by destruction. Buildings that should be landmarks are gone or unrecognizable. Smoke obscures distances, making it impossible to see more than a few meters ahead. You cannot tell which way leads home, which way leads toward greater danger, which way might offer safety. All directions look equally devastated, equally hostile to human life. Other figures move through this hellscape, survivors like yourself, burned, bleeding, disoriented. They walk with arms extended before them, not in the manner of the blind seeking obstacles, but because the burned skin of their arms and hands has begun to shrink as it cools, pulling their limbs into a position that will become known as the atomic bomb position. Fingers curled, wrists bent, elbows flexed, the characteristic stance of the severely burned, preserved in photographs that will haunt future generations. Some of these walking wounded are naked, their clothes burned away entirely, or hanging in carbonized tatters. Others wear garments that have partially fused with their skin, white patterns of undershirt, visible against red and black burns, dark patterns of kimono burned into flesh. Modesty has no place here. The boundaries between public and private, between appropriate and inappropriate, have been erased along with so much else. There is only survival now, animal, instinctive, stripped of social convention. The mushroom cloud continues to rise above the city, reaching more than 60,000 feet into the stratosphere. At its base, a column of dust and debris connects it to what was once Hiroshima. From where you stand, it looks close enough to touch, though it towers miles above, its expanding head beginning to drift with high-altitude winds. The cloud glows from within, illuminated by the ongoing nuclear reaction, by the fires below, by physics beyond ordinary comprehension. It is both beautiful and obscene. Radiation continues to pour from this cloud, though you cannot see it, cannot feel it, cannot taste or smell or hear it. Unlike the thermal pulse and the pressure wave, radiation damage happens at the cellular level, at the molecular level. DNA breaks, cell division is disrupted, bone marrow, lymphatic tissue, gastrointestinal lining, the most rapidly dividing cells in your body are the most vulnerable. The damage is being done now, though its effects won't be fully apparent for hours, days, weeks. Some effects are more immediate. Nausea begins to grip you, a wave of sickness that seems to emanate from your core. This is radiation sickness in its earliest form, the first symptom of what doctors will later call acute radiation syndrome. The higher the dose, the faster the onset of symptoms. Your proximity to the hypocenter determines the dose you've received. 1 mile away, the dose was high, but not immediately lethal. It will make you very sick. It may kill you in days or weeks, or you may survive, carrying cellular damage that will manifest as cancer years later. You vomit, a violent expulsion that doubles you over, brings you to your knees on the hot ground. Around you, others are doing the same, bent over, emptying the contents of their stomachs onto rubble and ash. This communal sickness adds to the surreality of the scene. The vomit contains blood, though you do not notice this yet. The radiation has already begun to damage your gastrointestinal lining, causing small hemorrhages that will worsen as hours pass. When the nausea subsides momentarily, you raise your head. The fires are closer now. The temperature of the air is rising as the separate blazes join to form a continuous sheet of flame. Wind is picking up, not natural wind, but wind created by the fire itself as it consumes oxygen, creating a vacuum that pulls in more air from surroundings, feeding its own growth. This is the beginning of the firestorm that will consume what remains of Hiroshima. You need to move away from the spreading fire, away from buildings that continue to collapse, away from the center where radiation levels remain highest. But which way? Smoke obscures the sun, making it impossible to determine direction. Familiar landmarks are gone. Streets are blocked by debris. The bridges over the Chia River, would they still be standing? Would they offer escape routes, or have they become bottlenecks filled with the dead and dying? You choose a direction, stumbling forward on burned feet that leave bloody prints on the hot ground. Each step is agony. Each breath draws superheated air into damaged lungs. Each heartbeat sends pain pulsing through your burned body. But you move. Something primal drives you forward, the same instinct that makes any injured animal seek safety, seek shelter, seek survival despite overwhelming odds. Others move with you, forming a macabre procession of the walking wounded. No one speaks. What words could possibly be adequate? What language could contain this experience? Even those whose physical capacity for speech remains intact find themselves beyond words, reduced to the most basic communications, moans, whimpers, an outstretched hand, eyes seeking connection in the shared experience of the unsurvivable. The ground shakes as a damaged building finally surrenders to gravity and collapses nearby. The sound is tremendous. Concrete grinding against concrete, metal shrieking as it bends, the explosive release of pressure as air is forced from enclosed spaces. Dust billows outward from the collapse site, adding to the already thick atmosphere. You shield your face instinctively, though your burned arms provide little protection. Through gaps in the smoke, you catch glimpses of what lies ahead: more devastation, more fire, more figures moving like yourself, burned, bleeding, disoriented. Some are carrying others, parents with injured children, children with injured parents, strangers helping strangers. Some sit or lie where they have fallen, too injured to continue, waiting for help that cannot reach them, for medical care that does not exist in sufficient quantity to address even a fraction of the need. The temperature continues to rise as the firestorm intensifies. The separate fires have joined now, creating a continuous burn zone that generates its own weather. The superheated air rises rapidly, creating a chimney effect that draws in more oxygen from surrounding areas. This feeds the fire further, raising temperatures, increasing wind speeds, creating a self-sustaining cycle of destruction that will not end until it runs out of fuel. You are caught in this cycle now, moving through an environment becoming more hostile by the minute. The air you breathe is too hot for human lungs, too filled with particulate matter, too depleted of oxygen. Each breath becomes more difficult than the last. Your vision darkens at the edges, hypoxia setting in as your body struggles to extract sufficient oxygen from the available air. Your movements slow, become less coordinated. Your thoughts grow sluggish, disconnected. Still, you move forward, driven by instinct rather than rational thought. The direction doesn't matter now. All paths lead through fire, through rubble, through scenes of horror that your mind records but refuses to process fully. Self-preservation extends beyond the physical. Your consciousness protects itself by partially disengaging, by creating distance between perception and comprehension. You see everything. You understand nothing. This dissociation is the only mercy available. The hour that follows detonation unfolds in this manner, a slow-motion nightmare of fire and destruction, of pain beyond measurement, of transformation beyond understanding. The city you have known all your life, the streets you have walked daily, the buildings that have formed the backdrop of your existence, all changed beyond recognition, and you too transformed, from an ordinary citizen going about an ordinary morning to something else entirely. A survivor, perhaps, a victim, certainly, a witness to the unleashing of forces that will reshape not just Hiroshima, but human history itself. Hiroshima, August 6th, 1945, 9:30 a.m. The sun has disappeared completely now, hidden behind the expanding mushroom cloud and the thick pall of smoke that hangs over what remains of Hiroshima. A strange twilight has descended on the city, not the soft blue of natural evening, but a sepia-toned half-light filtered through particles of dust, ash, and vaporized materials. This artificial dusk has its own quality, a sickly luminescence that seems to emanate from the very air itself, as though the atmosphere has absorbed radiation and now glows with faint malignant light. You continue moving, though each step requires conscious effort. Your burned skin has tightened as it cools, forming a rigid casing that restricts movement. The burns are deep, 3rd degree in many places, extending through all layers of skin into underlying tissue. These burns don't hurt, the nerve endings are destroyed, but the surrounding 2nd degree burns create a ring of excruciating pain around each deadened patch. Your body has become a map of agony with islands of numbness. The nausea comes in waves now. You stop, bend double, empty your stomach onto the hot ground. The vomitus contains streaks of blood, bright red, indicating fresh bleeding from your upper gastrointestinal tract. This is the progression of acute radiation sickness, the prodromal phase giving way to the latent phase, which will give way to the manifest illness phase within hours or days. Your body is being destroyed from within, even as the external burns and injuries threaten your survival more visibly. Your hair begins to fall out in clumps. When you raise a hand to wipe sweat and blood from your eyes, strands come away between your fingers. Radiation damages rapidly dividing cells first, hair follicles, intestinal lining, bone marrow, lymphatic tissue. The loss of hair is merely the most visible sign of what's happening throughout your body at the cellular level. DNA is breaking. Chromosomes are fragmenting. The machinery of cellular replication is being dismantled, molecule by molecule. The air burns your lungs with each inhalation. This is not metaphorical burning. The air temperature in some areas approaches 500 degrees Celsius as the firestorm intensifies. Human lung tissue cannot survive such temperatures. Alveoli collapse, bronchioles sear shut, pulmonary edema develops as capillaries leak fluid into air spaces. You cough constantly, producing pink, frothy sputum. Each cough tears at your damaged throat, sending fresh waves of pain through your chest. Others move around you, through you, past you, a slow parade of the catastrophically injured. Some walk with purpose, heading toward the rivers or the outskirts of the city. Others wander aimlessly, disoriented by shock, by traumatic brain injury, by the complete disruption of everything familiar. Still others have stopped moving altogether, sitting or lying where they've fallen, energy depleted, will to continue exhausted, waiting for whatever comes next. The injuries you see defy description, exceed language's capacity to convey horror without diminishing it. Skin hangs from arms and faces like wet tissue paper. Eyes have melted in their sockets. Bones protrude through carbonized flesh. Burns form patterns determined by clothing worn at the moment of detonation. Dark fabrics absorbed more thermal radiation, burning the skin beneath more severely, while lighter colors provided some minimal protection. The result is a macabre tattoo of clothing patterns burned into human flesh. Some survivors carry their injuries with them, literal parts of themselves held in burned hands. A woman cradles what appears to be her own intestines, spilling from an abdominal wound. A man holds his severed ear, carrying it as though it might somehow be reattached. A child pulls a red, glistening length of tissue behind her, perhaps a segment of scalp torn loose when the pressure wave rolled her body along debris-covered ground. The human impulse to remain whole, to gather and preserve the scattered pieces of the self, persists even in this extremity. The sounds have changed since the initial blast. The cacophony of collapse has given way to something else, a continuous roar as the firestorm consumes what remains of the city. Beneath this relentless bass note, human sounds rise and fall, cries for help that grow weaker, calls for missing loved ones that go unanswered. Prayers offered in voices roar from screaming, from breathing superheated air, from the onset of radiation sickness that tightens throats and desiccates tongues. You hear a sound you cannot immediately identify, a soft, persistent pattering like gentle rain falling on leaves. Looking up, you see that black particles are indeed falling from the sky, carbonized paper, ash, the particulate remains of a city and its inhabitants. This radioactive black rain coats everything, the rubble, the bodies of the dead, your own burned skin. Each droplet carries radiation absorbed from the mushroom cloud, alpha particles, beta particles, gamma rays. Invisible poison falling like benediction on the already dying. The ground radiates heat upward. The air radiates heat downward. You exist between these two sources of energy, your body trying to maintain its own temperature in an environment that works actively against homeostasis. Dehydration accelerates, fluid evaporates from your skin, from your respiratory tract, from your eyes. Your lips crack. Your tongue swells. Thirst becomes a separate category of suffering, distinct from but complementary to the pain of burns, the nausea of radiation sickness, the struggle to breathe smoke-filled air, water. The need becomes overwhelming, superseding all other concerns. The Yishe River and its tributaries flow through Hiroshima, dividing the city into islands connected by bridges. If you could reach one of these watercourses, you might find relief from thirst, from heat, from the fire that pursues you with mindless persistence. You change direction, orienting yourself toward where you believe a branch of the river should be. Memory provides the only map now. All physical landmarks are gone or transformed beyond recognition. Others have had the same idea. A slow procession of injured moves in the same direction, drawn by the promise of water. Some crawl, unable to walk on burned feet or with broken limbs. Others help each other. Support systems forming spontaneously among strangers united by catastrophe. The strong assist the weak, though strong is a relative term here. Everyone is injured. Everyone is dying at different rates. All are moving toward the water with the same desperate need. You join this procession, this pilgrimage of the damned. Your pace slows further as exhaustion compounds your injuries. Each step requires conscious decision. Now, lift foot, move forward, place down, shift weight, repeat. Your focus narrows to this simple sequence, excluding all else. The periphery of your vision darkens. The sounds around you seem to come from greater distance. Your consciousness begins to flicker, to fade in and out, like a candle flame in wind. Something catches your foot. Debris, a body. It doesn't matter. You fall. The impact sends fresh pain cascading through your burned skin, your broken ribs, your damaged internal organs. For a moment, the shock of new pain brings clarity. The world snaps back into focus, harshly immediate. You see the ground beneath you, carbonized and still radiating heat. You see your own hands, the skin blackened and cracked like the surface of dried mud, pink tissue visible in the cracks. You see someone's shoe lying nearby, still containing a foot. You push yourself up, return to your feet, resume walking. The river must be close now. The ground slopes slightly downward, following the natural contours of the delta on which Hiroshima was built. The air, though still thick with smoke, feels marginally less hot. The sounds of the firestorm seem more distant. These small changes feed hope, irrational but necessary for continued movement, for continued survival. And then you see it, water reflecting what little light penetrates the smoke cover, the river, one branch of the Hest, flowing as it has for centuries, indifferent to the transformation of the city around it. The sight draws a sound from your parched throat, nothing as articulate as a word, just a recognition of salvation, however temporary. You are not alone in this reaction. All along the riverbank, survivors have gathered, sitting, lying, standing in the shallows. Some drink directly from the river, despite its contamination with debris, with oil, with ash, with radiation, with dissolved human remains. Others immerse their burned bodies entirely, seeking relief from pain, from heat. Some have died here, their bodies floating face down in the current, or washed against the bank, like driftwood. The banks themselves have become a place of gathering, of collective suffering beyond measurement. Those too weak to go further collapse here. Those looking for missing family members call names into the smoke-filled air. Those with medical training, doctors, nurses, first aid workers who have themselves survived, do what little they can with no supplies, no equipment, no medicines. They tear strips from less damaged clothing to create bandages. They use river water to clean wounds, despite its contamination. They offer what comfort they can to the dying. You make your way down the sloping bank, stumbling on loose stones, on abandoned possessions, on human remains. The ground becomes muddy near the water's edge, mud darkened by the black rain, sticky with ash and blood and other substances you choose not to identify. Your feet sink into this mud, each step requiring effort to pull free. But the water draws you forward. Thirst overcomes all obstacles. At the river's edge, you kneel. Your reflection appears in the water, distorted by the current, by floating debris, by the poor light. Still, what you see stops your reaching hands. Your face is unrecognizable. Burns have erased your features, have transformed you into something other than yourself, other than human. Your eyes stare back from deep sockets surrounded by scorched flesh. Your hair, what remains of it, hangs in singed patches. Blood and fluid have dried in tracks down what was once your face. The shock passes quickly. Thirst reasserts itself. You plunge your hands into the water. The coolness against your burned skin, both relief and fresh agony simultaneously. You bring water to your mouth. Drink deeply, despite the taste of ash, of chemicals, of death. Your body demands hydration, overriding all other concerns. You drink until nausea rises again, until you vomit the contaminated water back into the river, adding your own contribution to the flowing record of disaster. Hours have passed since the bomb fell. The immediate effects, the flash, the heat, the pressure wave, have given way to secondary effects, no less deadly. Fire continues to consume what remains of the city. Buildings weakened by the blast continue to collapse. Radiation continues its invisible work within the bodies of survivors, and new threats emerge. The tide is rising, pushing upstream into the Shuta River Delta. This tidal flow carries floating corpses back into the city, returning the dead to the place of their dying. You sit at the river's edge, strength temporarily exhausted. The water has relieved your thirst, but done nothing for your other injuries, for the radiation sickness that progresses within you hour by hour. Your skin continues to tighten as burns contract. Your nausea comes in stronger waves. Your temperature rises as infection begins in open wounds. Your hair continues to fall out, radiation damage manifesting visibly, while hidden damage proceeds in bone marrow, in internal organs. Others gather near you, drawn to the river by the same desperate thirst. No one speaks. What is there to say? What words exist for this experience? What language can contain these hours? Even those who retain the physical capacity for speech find themselves beyond verbal expression, reduced to the mute communication of shared suffering, of witnessed horror. The sky remains obscured by the expanding mushroom cloud, by smoke from ongoing fires, by the atmospheric disruption caused by the thermal column rising from the city's center. Through gaps in this cover, strange lights appear, prismatic effects, as sunshine passes through particulate matter suspended in the air. Rainbow fragments appear and disappear. The beauty of these ephemeral spectacles contrasts obscenely with the destruction below, with the suffering of those who witness them through damaged eyes. The air itself seems solid now, so filled with smoke, with ash, with pulverized concrete, with vaporized materials, that each breath feels like inhaling wet sand. Your lungs labor against this burden, struggling to extract oxygen from air that contains less and less of it as the firestorm consumes what's available. Hypoxia deepens. Your thoughts grow more disjointed. Time loses its linear progression, becomes a series of disconnected moments strung loosely together by pain, by the struggle to breathe. Someone sits beside you on the riverbank, a woman, her age impossible to determine through her injuries. Burns have removed most of her hair, have transformed her face into a mask of blistered tissue. Her cotton yukata hangs in carbonized tatters from her shoulders. She makes no sound, seeks no interaction. She simply sits, staring at the water with eyes that register nothing. After some time, minutes or hours, you cannot tell, she lays down on the muddy bank and becomes still. Her breathing stops. She has come to the river to die. You witness this without emotion. Your capacity for normal human response has been exceeded, burned away with so much else. You register her death as simple fact, not as tragedy. One more body among thousands, one more life ended by forces beyond comprehension, beyond justification, beyond meaning. You do not close her eyes, you do not say prayers, you do not mark her passing in any way. You simply observe, as dispassionate as the river itself. The firestorm approaches the river now, having consumed much of what was combustible in the city center. The heat increases again, smoke thickens, the relatively clearer air near the water's edge fills with particulate matter. The breathing of survivors around you becomes more labored, punctuated by deeper coughing, by the sound of fluid in lungs. Some begin to move again, to relocate downriver, seeking cleaner air, greater distance from the advancing fire. You should join them. Logic suggests movement, suggests putting distance between yourself and the firestorm, but exhaustion counter-argues. Your body has reached its limits, has depleted its reserves, has suffered injuries that would be fatal even with immediate medical attention. And there is no medical attention, not for you, not for most survivors. The hospitals are destroyed, the medical personnel largely casualties themselves. Those doctors and nurses who survived are overwhelmed, working with bare hands among the thousands of injured. Still, some instinct for survival persists. You rise again, sway momentarily as vertigo grips you, then steady yourself. The woman who died remains on the bank, her body already being covered by the black rain's continued precipitation of ash. You step around her, join the slow movement of survivors relocating downriver. This mass migration lacks urgency. No one has the strength for rapid movement. It resembles nothing so much as a processional, a ritualized movement of the damned towards some final judgment. The riverbank itself becomes more crowded as more survivors find their way to the water. The injured sit or lie along the muddy shore, for as far as you can see through the smoke. Some call out for water, for help, for missing loved ones, for death to take them quickly. Others remain silent, conserving what little strength remains. Military personnel appear occasionally, surviving members of the garrison that made Hiroshima a target. They do what they can to organize relief efforts, but they too are injured, irradiated, overwhelmed by the scale of the catastrophe. By mid-afternoon, though time has become abstract, difficult to measure in the perpetual twilight created by smoke and ash. A new sound reaches your ears, voices singing. The sound is so incongruous in this landscape of suffering that you wonder if radiation sickness has begun to affect your hearing, to create auditory hallucinations. But others hear it too, heads turning toward the source, expressions of confusion, visible even through burns and disfigurement. A group of schoolgirls, survivors from one of Hiroshima's educational institutions, has formed a choir on a relatively clear patch of bank. Their injuries are severe: burns, cuts, radiation sickness, evident in their vomiting between verses. Their school uniforms hang in tatters. Some are missing hair, missing ears, missing fingers, yet they sing traditional songs, patriotic songs, religious songs, their voices cracking with dehydration, with emotion, with approaching death. This act of creation amidst absolute destruction affects you more deeply than all the horror you've witnessed. Something breaks inside you, some emotional dam that has held back response. Tears come now, stinging your burned cheeks, running in dirty tracks down what remains of your face. The singing continues as you move past, following the slow migration downstream. The voices fade behind you, replaced by the ever-present sound of the firestorm, by the moans of the injured, by the lapping of the river against its banks. Your tears stop as quickly as they began. Your body has no fluid to spare for emotional release. Dehydration reclaims you, despite the water you've consumed. The contamination of that water guarantees that it provides only temporary relief. Night approaches. Not that darkness will be noticeably different from the artificial twilight that has persisted since the mushroom cloud blocked the sun, but the air temperature drops slightly as the sun sets beyond the smoke cover. This small mercy is counterbalanced by new challenges. Visibility, already poor, decreases further. The risk of stepping on debris, on human remains, on the living who have collapsed on the ground, increases, and the cold begins to affect those whose burns have destroyed the skin's ability to regulate temperature. You continue walking, following the river's course, more by sound than by sight now. Your body moves on autopilot, each step an act of defiance against physics, against biology, against reasonable probability. By any rational measure, you should have stopped hours ago, should have joined the dead and dying who lined the route of your exodus. But something drives you forward, not hope exactly, but its more primitive ancestor, the simple refusal to stop while breath remains, the animal persistence that precedes and undergirds all higher considerations. The air burns without fire now. This is a chemical burning, a toxic quality to the atmosphere itself. The bomb has transformed Hiroshima's air into something hostile to life, something that damages lungs with each inhalation. Survivors who escaped the blast, the heat, the fires, will die days or weeks later from damage done to their respiratory systems by the very act of breathing this poisoned atmosphere. You cough almost continuously now, each spasm sending pain through your chest where broken ribs grind against one another. As night deepens, new sounds emerge from the darkness. Prayers being chanted, Buddhist sutras, Shinto invocations, Christian psalms. The words overlap, create a multi-layered tapestry of supplication that rises from the banks of the Shinto river. The voices are weak, damaged by smoke inhalation, by thirst, by approaching death. Yet they persist. The human need to make meaning, to seek connection with something beyond the immediate suffering, survives even this catastrophe. You add your voice to this chorus, though you barely recognize the sound that emerges from your damaged throat. The words of the Heart Sutra come unbidden to your lips, Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Never have these words seemed more literally true, more immediately relevant. You have witnessed form being transformed into emptiness. You have seen emptiness assume new forms. The abstract philosophy of Buddhism has become concrete reality in the streets of Hiroshima. The night deepens. The fires continue to burn throughout the city, providing the only illumination now that darkness has fallen completely. The glow reflects off the underside of the smoke canopy, creating a dome of dull red light that covers what remains of Hiroshima. It is as though the city has been transported to some hellish dimension, where the sun has been replaced by fire, the sky by smoke, the air by poison. Your strength fails finally. You sink to the ground at the river's edge, joining countless others who line the bank like offerings to some river deity. The mud is cool against your burned skin. The sound of flowing water provides counterpoint to the roar of distant fires, to the moans of the dying, to the prayers that continue to rise around you. You lie there, suspended between life and death, between consciousness and oblivion, between the person you were yesterday and the collection of failing organs and damaged tissues you have become. The air burns without fire, your lungs burn without oxygen, your skin burns without heat, your mind burns without comprehension. Everything burns in Hiroshima tonight, consumed by forces beyond human scale, beyond human understanding, beyond human control. Tomorrow, if you survive until morning, you will witness the full extent of what has happened. Tomorrow, the changed world will begin to reckon with its new reality. Tomorrow, those who deployed this weapon and those who suffered beneath it will begin the long process of determining what it means for war, for peace, for humanity itself. But tonight, there is only this: the burning air, the flowing river, the dying city, the suffering that exceeds language's capacity to contain it. You close your eyes, not knowing if you will open them again. Hiroshima, August 7th, 1945. Dawn morning comes as a gradual lightening of darkness, rather than a true dawn. The sun rises somewhere beyond the pall of smoke that still hangs over Hiroshima, but its light is diffused, filtered, transformed into a sickly glow that illuminates without warming, that reveals without clarifying. You open your eyes, surprised to find yourself still alive, still breathing the poisoned air, still lying on the muddy bank of the Reta River, where exhaustion finally overcame you. Your first sensation is thirst, a desperate, cellular need for water that overrides all other considerations. Your tongue has swollen, filling your mouth, pressing against cracked lips. Your throat feels lined with sand. Each breath draws hot, dry air over tissues designed for moisture, for protection, for normal human function. You turn your head toward the river, measuring the distance between your current position and the water's edge. It might as well be miles for all your strength allows. Around you, other survivors are waking to the same realization that they have survived the night, that suffering continues, that the new day brings no relief, no rescue, no diminishment of horror. Some do not wake at all. During the night, hundreds have died along the riverbank, their bodies now slumped in postures of final repose, already beginning to decompose in the August heat. No one has the strength to move them, to provide any semblance of proper burial. They remain where they fell, becoming part of the landscape of catastrophe. The silence is the first thing you notice as consciousness fully returns. Not complete silence. There are still sounds. The flow of the river, the crackle of distant fires, the moans of the injured, the occasional call for water, for help, for mercy. But underlying these specific sounds is a quality of silence that seems to emanate from the ruined city itself, a profound absence of the normal urban soundscape. No traffic noise, no factory whistles, no children playing, no radios broadcasting morning news, no street vendors calling their wares. The acoustic ecology of a living city has been replaced by the sparse, haunted soundscape of aftermath. You attempt to rise, to reach the water your body craves. Your muscles respond sluggishly, reluctantly. During the night, your burns have worsened. The damaged tissue has begun to die, to slough away in places, revealing raw flesh beneath. Infection has set in despite the radiation's temporary suppression of bacterial growth. Your temperature cycles between fever and chills. Your heart races, then slows erratically. Each breath feels shallower than the last. Still, you manage to crawl the short distance to the river's edge. The water is opaque with ash, with cement dust, with substances you choose not to identify. You drink anyway, your body's need overwhelming any consideration of contamination. The water is warm, tasting of smoke, of chemicals, of decay, or momentarily relieves the worst of your thirst, but settles uneasily in your stomach, threatening to return the way it came. With the modest relief provided by hydration comes clearer awareness of your surroundings. The riverbank has become something beyond description, a vision of hell as interpreted by artists, more literal than Bosch, more terrible than Goya. Bodies and parts of bodies lie half submerged in the shallows. The wounded occupy every square meter of relatively flat ground, their injuries defying medical categorization, exceeding the descriptive capacity of existing terminology. Burns upon burns, trauma upon trauma, the human form distorted beyond recognition, yet still containing life, still containing consciousness, still containing the awareness of its own suffering. Others are moving now as well. Those who, like you, have survived the night against probability. They move with the same desperate slowness, the same painful deliberation. They drink from the contaminated river. They call for missing loved ones, in voices damaged by smoke, by screaming, by the cellular effects of radiation that has transformed their bodies at the molecular level. They help each other when strength allows. They bear witness when it doesn't. You became separated from your shopping bag yesterday. In the moment, the world changed. The fish, the daikon, the tofu, the greens, these concerns belong to another lifetime now. Food seems an abstract concept, disconnected from your current reality. Your body signals hunger, but the sensation is distant, secondary to thirst, to pain, to the growing awareness that something fundamental has changed within you, that damage has been done at levels beyond immediate perception. A military vehicle appears on what remains of a road running parallel to the river, a truck, somehow still operational, driven by Japanese soldiers who appear ghost-like through the smoky air. They stop periodically, loading the most critically injured onto the truck bed. Medical triage under impossible conditions. How does one determine degrees of critical when all injuries exceed normal categorization? Who lives? Who receives the limited medical care available? These Solomon judgments fall to young men themselves injured, themselves irradiated, themselves operating at the edge of collapse. The truck passes without stopping near you. Perhaps your injuries appear less severe from a distance. Perhaps the vehicle has already reached capacity. Perhaps you are already categorized among those beyond help. You watch it disappear into the smoke, taking with it whatever slim hope of medical attention it represented. You are on your own, as are most survivors of Hiroshima on this second day. With morning light, however filtered and strange, comes the possibility of taking stock, of seeing what remains of the city. You rise to your feet with enormous effort, steadying yourself against dizziness, against weakness, against the disorientation that comes from existing in a landscape transformed beyond recognition. From your position near the river, you can see what the night and smoke previously obscured. The full extent of Hiroshima's destruction stretches in every direction. The city has been erased. This is the thought that forms as you survey what's visible through gaps in the smoke. Erased, not merely damaged or destroyed. Where neighborhoods of wooden homes once stood, nothing remains but carbonized posts marking foundation lines. Where concrete buildings rose, skeletal frames stand like the ribs of enormous beasts. After scavengers have finished their work, the dome of the Industrial Promotion Hall, what will later be preserved as the Atomic Bomb Dome, stands as a solitary recognizable landmark, its metal framework exposed, its walls partially collapsed, yet somehow still standing when everything around it has been flattened. The silence intensifies as you absorb this vista of annihilation. It's not just the absence of normal urban sounds, it's a positive presence, a palpable quality that seems to absorb other sounds, to deaden them, to transform them into ghosts of themselves. This is the silence of absolute change, of history dividing into before and after, of human experience entering territory for which no precedent exists. This is the silence that will never heal, that will echo in the ears of survivors for decades, that will be passed down through generations as a non-verbal inheritance of trauma. You begin walking, directionless at first, then with growing purpose, home. The concept seems simultaneously vital and absurd. Your home likely no longer exists. If it does, it may be burning still, may be irradiated, may be filled with the dead. Yet the pull of place exerts itself even in this extremity. You need to know, you need to see, you need to confirm what logic already tells you must be true. The walk is nightmarish, a journey through a landscape so transformed that navigation becomes an act of memory rather than perception. Street signs are gone, landmarks are destroyed. The very topography has changed as buildings collapsed, as debris formed new hills and valleys, as fires created their own terrain. You orient yourself by what remains: a stone lantern still standing, the curve of the river, the distant hills that frame the city and have watched, indifferent, as human history unfolds below. Others walk with similar purpose, survivors seeking homes, seeking family members, seeking any recognizable fragment of their previous lives. They move like specters through the smoke-filled streets, their injuries rendering them almost unrecognizable as individuals. Burns have transformed faces into masks. Radiation sickness has robbed bodies of hair, of fluid, of integrity. There you form a procession of the altered, making pilgrimage through ruins toward destinations that may no longer exist. The dead are everywhere now. Yesterday, in the immediate aftermath, the living outnumbered the dead along your route of escape. Today the ratio has reversed. Bodies lie where they fell, in streets, in the skeletal remains of buildings, in gardens turned to ash. Some are relatively intact, others are fragmented, partially crushed by falling debris, partially consumed by fire. Some are recognizable as human. Others have been transformed beyond immediate identification, requiring secondary characteristics, clothing remnants, personal items, location, to connect them to the individuals they once were. The smell has intensified as well, the complex, overwhelming odor of mass death, of burning organic matter, of chemicals released from ruptured containers, of dust from pulverized concrete and glass. This smell defies compartmentalization. exceeds the brain's ability to process it as separate components. It becomes a single sensory assault, a wall of olfactory information, too dense to penetrate, too pervasive to escape. You breathe it with every inhalation. It permeates your clothing, your hair, your skin. It will linger in your memory, long after all other aspects of this experience have faded. You pass what was once a school. The building itself is gone. Collapse has reduced it to a pile of concrete, rebar, shattered glass, and splintered wood. What stops you is the sight of tiny shoes, hundreds of them, scattered around the ruins. School children in Japan remove their outdoor shoes upon entering, replacing them with indoor yuwabaki. These small shoes represent children who never had the chance to reclaim them, who died at their desks, in their classrooms, during morning lessons. The sight arrests your progress momentarily. Even after all you've witnessed, this simple evidence of young lives ended en masse retains the power to shock. Your journey continues through streets that have become tunnels, through debris, through ash that rises with each step to coat your legs, through scenes of devastation that repeat with such consistency that they begin to lose specific impact. A kitchen chair sitting upright and undamaged amid total destruction. A ceramic bowl unbroken on a foundation where a house once stood. A bicycle fused to a metal railing, its rubber tires vaporized, its frame contorted by heat. A shadow burned into stone steps, the permanent record of a person sitting there at the moment of detonation, their body blocking the thermal radiation that darkened the surrounding stone. Other survivors recognize these shadows for what they are. They stop, bow slightly toward these human negatives, these absence presences that represent individuals erased so completely that only their silhouettes remain. Some places these shadows in clusters, groups of people talking, waiting, existing in their final moments before transformation into memory, into history, into cautionary tale for future generations. You begin to recognize landmarks as you approach what was once your neighborhood. The stone lantern at the corner, somehow still standing when everything around it has fallen. The ginkgo tree, its leaves and smaller branches burned away, but its trunk still rising from the decimated earth. The small shrine, reduced to its stone foundation, but identifiable by the pattern of paving stones leading to it. These familiar elements both orient and disorient. Their presence confirms location, while their altered state confirms the absolute transformation of everything you once knew. And then you see it, the place where your home stood. Nothing remains except the concrete step at what was once the entrance, the wooden structure, the paper screens, the tatami mats, the kitchen where you prepared meals, the closet where you stored bedding, all gone, not broken, not damaged, not burned, gone, as if they never existed, as if the life you lived within those now absent walls was itself a dream, a memory belonging to someone else, a story you once heard but never personally experienced. You stand before this absence, this negative space that once contained your existence. The silence deepens around you, the ambient sounds of the ruined city, distant voices, falling debris, the crackle of isolated fires still burning, seem to recede, to dim, to fade into irrelevance. There is only this moment, this recognition, this confrontation with absolute loss. Not just the loss of physical structure, of possessions, of place, but the loss of continuity, of connection to your own past, of the linear narrative that defined your existence until yesterday morning. Something breaks within you, not dramatically, not with sound or visible manifestation, but quietly, fundamentally. A fault line appears in your perception of reality, dividing everything into before and after. Before the world made a certain kind of sense, it contained order, causality, meaning. After this after, in which you now exist, these qualities no longer apply. The world has revealed itself as arbitrary, as capable of transformation beyond reason, beyond justification, beyond comprehension. This revelation changes everything, will continue to change everything for whatever remains of your life. You sink to your knees on the concrete step that once led to your front door. This simple posture, knees bent, body lowered, sends fresh pain cascading through your burned flesh, your broken bones, your radiation-sick organs. But the pain feels distant now, belongs to a physical reality separate from the emotional and existential territory you've entered. Your body registers suffering. Your mind registers something beyond suffering, something for which language provides no adequate term. Time passes. The sun continues its arc across the smoke-filled sky, invisible but marking hours with gradual shifts in the quality of light filtering through the pall that hangs over Hiroshima. You remain kneeling on the step, immobilized not by physical limitation, but by the sheer weight of comprehension, of loss, of transformation. Other survivors pass, some searching for their own homes, some seeking water, some moving without apparent purpose beyond movement itself. None disturb you. They recognize in your posture, in your stillness, something they feel themselves, the paralysis that comes when the mind encounters reality that exceeds its capacity for integration. Eventually, necessity reasserts itself. Thirst returns, more demanding than before. Hunger makes itself known as a hollow ache beneath your sternum. Your injuries continue their progression, burns becoming infected, radiation sickness advancing through its predictable stages, broken bones shifting with each movement to grind against one another. Your body, despite everything, continues to operate according to its programming. It seeks survival, even when survival seems more burden than blessing. You rise unsteady, on legs weakened by injury, by dehydration, by the beginning stages of starvation. Where to go, what to do. The questions themselves feel absurd in this altered landscape. There is no normal course of action, no social script to follow, no precedent to guide behavior in the aftermath of atomic destruction. Yet some decisions must be made, some direction chosen, some next step taken. Water first. The necessity overrides all other considerations. You turn back toward the river, retracing the path through ruins that brought you to this place of absence. The journey seems longer now, your strength further diminished, your injuries more insistent in their demands for attention. The sun has reached its zenith, heating the debris-filled streets, raising the temperature of ash and concrete and metal until the ground itself radiates warmth upward, creating a layer of superheated air that shimmers with refracted light. Other survivors have had similar thoughts. The riverbanks are crowded with the injured seeking water, seeking coolness, seeking relief from the August heat that intensifies suffering. Many have died since morning, their bodies lying where they fell or floating in the shallows, caught against rocks, against debris, against other bodies. No one has the strength to move them, to provide any semblance of normal death ritual. They remain where death found them, becoming part of the landscape of aftermath. You make your way to the water's edge, kneel again, cup hands that shake with weakness, with radiation sickness, with the beginning of what doctors will later call acute radiation syndrome, entering its manifest illness phase. The water is worse than before, more contaminated with debris, with oil, with ash, with the products of human decomposition. Still, you drink. The body's need overrides all considerations of quality, of safety, of future consequence. You drink until nausea rises again, until your stomach threatens to expel what little you've managed to swallow. A sound reaches you, mechanical, recognizable, yet seemingly out of place in this world of ruin. An airplane, different from yesterday's B-29 that delivered destruction from above, smaller, lower. A Japanese reconnaissance plane, surveying the damage, documenting what one bomb has done to an entire city. You look up, shading damaged eyes with a burned hand. As the plane circles, dark against the lighter smoke layer, it will return to its base with reports, with photographs, with confirmation of what American radio broadcasts have already claimed, that a new weapon of unprecedented power has been deployed against Hiroshima. The sight of the plane triggers something unexpected: anger. Not at the American forces that dropped the bomb, though that will come later. Not at the Japanese military leadership that pursued war until this became possible, though that too will emerge with time. No, this first anger is directed at the reconnaissance plane itself, at its intact form moving through air on functioning engines, at its pilot safe in a cockpit, observing but not experiencing, documenting but not understanding. The plane represents a world that still operates normally, that still follows predictable physical laws, that still contains cause and effect in recognizable relationship. Your anger is at the existence of such a world when yours has been so absolutely transformed. The emotion passes quickly, replaced by the more immediate concerns of survival. Night will come again. Where will you sleep? The riverbank is crowded, often flooded by changing tides, increasingly contaminated by decomposition. Your home is gone. Public buildings that might offer shelter have been destroyed or are filled with the more critically injured. Some survivors have begun constructing makeshift shelters from debris, from corrugated metal sheets, from anything that might provide minimal protection from elements, from exposure, from the psychological weight of absolute vulnerability. You begin gathering materials: a sheet of metal, warped by heat, but still intact; part of a wooden beam, one end charred but the other usable; a section of what might have been a door frame. These you drag to a relatively clear area near where your home once stood. The effort exhausts your limited strength, sends fresh waves of nausea through your radiation-sick body, reopens burns that have begun to scab, shifting broken bones that have started to knit improperly for lack of medical attention. Others are doing the same, constructing primitive shelters from the debris of their former lives. There is little communication. What is there to say? What words could possibly bridge the gap between yesterday and today, between the world that was and the world that is? Occasional nods of recognition pass between survivors who were neighbors before. Names are sometimes called when a familiar face, though burned, radiation-sick, transformed by suffering, is spotted among the moving figures, but mostly there is silence. The silence that blankets Hiroshima, that infiltrates consciousness, that becomes both environment and internal state. Your shelter takes shape, crude, minimal, barely deserving of the term. It will provide some protection from sun, from the continuing black rain, from the ash that still falls intermittently from the sky. It cannot protect from radiation already absorbed, from injuries already sustained, from the transformation already wrought upon your body at the cellular level, upon your consciousness at levels beyond articulation. Night approaches again, the second night after the bomb. Darkness falls more naturally, this time the smoke having thinned somewhat as fires burn themselves out, as wind begins to disperse the pall hanging over the city. Stars become visible in patches, their eternal perspective a sharp contrast to the immediate devastation below. Their light seems obscene in its beauty, in its continuation, in its indifference to human suffering that unfolds beneath their distant radiance. Under your makeshift shelter, you prepare for another night in this new reality. Your body demonstrates the progression of radiation sickness with textbook precision: nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, fever, headache, dizziness. Your hair continues to fall out in clumps. Your gums bleed when you run your tongue over them. Purple spots appear on your skin, petechiae, indicating hemorrhage beneath the surface, as blood vessels rupture, as platelets required for clotting diminish, as bone marrow damaged by radiation fails to produce replacements. The night is filled with new sounds: helicopters passing overhead, military vehicles on roads partially cleared by work crews, voices of authority calling instructions that few have the strength to follow. Help is beginning to arrive, though far too little, far too late for many. Field hospitals have been established on the outskirts of the destruction zone. Medical personnel, themselves often injured, themselves suffering radiation exposure, work without adequate supplies, without electricity, without running water, without any medical precedent for the conditions they're treating. You listen to these sounds of response, of attempted restoration of order with detachment. They belong to a world trying to reassert normalcy, trying to bring comprehensible structure to incomprehensible event. Your reality has shifted beyond the reach of such efforts. You exist now in a different dimension of experience, one defined by silence, deeper than sound, by transformation more fundamental than physical destruction, by knowledge that cannot be unlearned. Sleep comes in fragments, interrupted by pain, by nausea, by the moans of others, nearby similarly sheltered, similarly suffering. Your dreams, when they come, are saturated with light, not natural light, not sunlight, or moonlight, or firelight, but the otherworldly radiance of the atomic flash. This light becomes a presence in your unconscious, a recurring motif that will inhabit your dreamscape for the remainder of your life. Years later, decades later, you will wake from dreams of this light, sweating, heart racing, momentarily unsure which reality is real, which is memory, which is nightmare. Morning arrives, the third day. Your body continues its struggle against injuries that would be fatal with immediate medical attention, against radiation damage that rewrites your cellular function with each passing hour, against the psychological weight of witnessing what no human was designed to witness. You emerge from your shelter into dawn light that seems unnaturally beautiful after 2 days of smoke-filtered twilight. The air has cleared somewhat, revealing more fully the extent of destruction, the transformed topography of what was once Hiroshima. More help has arrived overnight. Japanese military units from outside the blast zone have mobilized, bringing limited medical supplies, food, clean water. American forces remain distant, observing through reconnaissance flights, monitoring radiation levels, documenting effects, but not rendering aid. The occupation is still weeks away. The war continues, though its conclusion has been written in atomic fire over Hiroshima, will be underlined 3 days later in similar fire over Nagasaki. You make your way toward one of the aid stations established at the periphery of the destruction zone. The walk is long, demanding reserves of strength you no longer possess. You move anyway, driven by the body's insistence on survival, despite all contrary evidence, all logical argument, all existential questioning. Other survivors move with you, a slow procession of the catastrophically injured making pilgrimage toward help that cannot possibly address the scale and nature of their suffering. The aid station is overwhelmed, understaffed, undersupplied. Military doctors and nurses work alongside civilian medical personnel who have come from neighboring communities. They have no specific treatment for radiation sickness. Its symptoms are addressed individually, symptomatically, without understanding of the underlying cellular damage that drives them. Burns are cleaned with limited antiseptic, covered with whatever clean material is available. Broken bones are set if obvious, left if not immediately apparent. Rehydration is attempted with boiled water, with weak tea, with whatever fluids can be provided to the thousands who need them. You receive minimal care, cleaning of your most severe burns, a drink of uncontaminated water, a rice ball that you cannot keep down as nausea returns immediately upon eating. The medical staff moves quickly from patient to patient, doing what little they can before moving to the next, and the next, and the next. There are too many injured, too few medical personnel, too limited supplies. The mathematics of disaster dictates that most will receive insufficient treatment, that many will die who might have lived with adequate care, that survival depends more on random chance, on specific location during blast, on specific genetic factors affecting radiation resistance, on specific psychological resources enabling endurance of trauma, than on medical intervention. After receiving what little care is available, you face another decision: where to go, what to do. Your home is gone. Your neighborhood exists only as ash and memory. Your possessions have been vaporized, burned, buried beneath rubble, scattered by blast. You have no documentation, no identification, no proof of the life you lived before August 6th. You are reduced to biological presence, to wounded body, to traumatized consciousness, to memory that already begins to question itself. Did the events of the past 2 days really happen, as you recall them? Was the light really that bright? The heat really that intense? The destruction really that complete? You choose to return to your makeshift shelter, not because it offers any real protection, any real comfort, but because it represents the only constant in a world where all other constants have been erased. It becomes an anchor point in chaos, a reference location in a city where all normal references have been destroyed. This primitive structure, created from debris by your own injured hands, becomes home by default, by elimination of all alternatives, by the body's need for some defined space in which to continue its battle for survival. The walk back is more difficult than the walk out. Your strength, temporarily bolstered by the minimal food and water received at the aid station, flags quickly. The day has grown hot. August heat intensified by lack of shade, by dark debris absorbing sunlight, by the continuing metabolic effects of radiation sickness that disrupt your body's ability to regulate temperature. You stop frequently, resting on pieces of concrete, on fallen beams, on ground still covered with ash, but cooling as hours pass, since the fires burned themselves out. Along the way, you encounter more evidence of attempted response, of emerging structure amid chaos. Military personnel have begun marking districts with signs, establishing meeting points where survivors might find family members separated during the blast and its aftermath. Makeshift morgues have been created, spaces where the dead are laid in rows, where those searching for missing loved ones might identify remains, where records are kept of those confirmed dead, those still missing, those who will never be found because they were vaporized at the epicenter, transformed from human beings into constituent elements in milliseconds. You pass one of these collection points. Bodies are arranged on the ground, covered when possible with sheets, with clothing, with anything available. Many are unrecognizable, burned beyond identification, beginning to decompose in summer heat, despite efforts at preservation. Family members move among these rows, looking for distinctive clothing, for jewelry, for any marker that might connect these anonymous remains to specific names, to specific lives, to specific spaces in the human community now ruptured by absence. The sight arrests your progress. You stand watching this most human of activities, the identification and mourning of the dead, the attempt to maintain connection between the worlds of the living and the deceased. Even in this extremity, these fundamental rituals persist, even when conventional burial is impossible due to numbers, due to ground conditions, due to radiation. The living still attempt to mark passing, to acknowledge loss, to maintain the thin thread of continuity that connects generations. You continue onward, leaving this scene of collective grief behind, carrying its images with you as additional weight upon already burdened consciousness. Your shelter appears on the horizon, pathetic in its construction, miraculous in its continued existence. Without landmarks, without signs, without maps, you have navigated back to this specific point in a landscape rendered unrecognizable. Something deeper than visual recognition, than logical wayfinding, has guided you back to this place. A survival mechanism, a homing instinct, a need for whatever consistency remains available in a world where consistency itself has become luxury. At your shelter, you collapse. The exertion of walking to the aid station and back has depleted what little reserve remained. Your body shuts down non-essential functions, diverts limited energy to vital organs, to the ongoing battle against radiation damage occurring at the cellular level throughout your systems. You lose consciousness, not sleep, but something deeper, a physiological retreat from stimulus, from pain, from the overwhelming input that has characterized every moment since the bomb fell. How long you remain unconscious, you cannot know. There is no timepiece, no regular marking of hours. The position of the sun suggests afternoon, when awareness returns, filtered light angling through gaps in your makeshift roof, creating patterns on the debris-strewn ground that serves as both floor and bed. Your first sensation is thirst, constant companion now, unrelenting presence, the body's insistent reminder of its most basic needs, even as more complex systems fail. You drink from a container left by aid workers, a dented metal cup filled with water that tastes of purification tablets, but contains none of the contamination present in river water. This small mercy, clean water, seems tremendous in its significance. Your gratitude is physical, cellular, bringing tears to eyes already damaged by flash burn, by smoke, by continuous environmental assault. Such is the nature of disaster. It recalibrates appreciation, transforms minor comforts into profound gifts. Evening approaches, the third since the bomb fell. The sky above Hiroshima has cleared enough to reveal sunset colors, surreal in their beauty, after days of smoke-filtered gray. The radiation released by the bomb has not affected the atmosphere's ability to refract light, to transform the day's end into spectacle of orange and pink and deepening blue. Nature continues its cycles, indifferent to human catastrophe occurring within its larger patterns. The sun will set and rise again, seasons will change, rain will fall, wind will blow. The planet turns, unaltered in its course, by events that have transformed human history irrevocably. This disjunction between cosmic continuity and human rupture becomes another weight upon consciousness, already burdened beyond design capacity. Your perception encompasses both scales simultaneously, the unchanged celestial mechanics overhead, and the absolutely changed human reality below. The contrast forms cognitive dissonance that cannot be resolved, that will remain as background radiation in your awareness for whatever life remains to you. Night falls. Stars emerge in greater numbers than were visible yesterday. Evidence of clearing skies, of dispersing smoke, of fires burned to completion. Their light seems simultaneously comforting and obscene, connection to eternal patterns that preceded this catastrophe and will survive it, yet indifferent witness to suffering that unfolds beneath their distant radiance. You lie in your shelter, looking upward through gaps in the metal roof, seeking meaning in patterns of light that reached Earth after traveling millions of years through space, that will continue their journey through time long after human civilization has disappeared completely. Sleep comes eventually, the body demanding rest, even as the mind resists, surrender to unconsciousness, to vulnerability, to the dreams that wait on the other side of wakefulness. Your sleep is shallow, interrupted, haunted by images that are not dreams but memories too terrible to be processed in waking hours. The light returns in these fragments of unconsciousness, the otherworldly brightness that divided history into before and after, that transformed Hiroshima from living city to physical and philosophical ground zero, that continues to burn in the visual cortex of survivors long after its actual duration has ended. Morning arrives. The fourth day. You wake to sounds of increased activity, more vehicles on partially cleared roads, more voices calling instructions, more evidence of organized response emerging from initial chaos. The Japanese government has mobilized resources, has sent workers and supplies into Hiroshima, despite radiation danger not yet fully understood, despite transportation infrastructure damaged or destroyed, despite the ongoing war that continues to consume national capacity. You emerge from your shelter into this fourth day of altered reality. Your physical condition has deteriorated further, radiation sickness progressing through its predictable phases, burns becoming increasingly infected despite minimal treatment, broken bones shifting with each movement as your body attempts to heal itself without medical intervention. Your hair has fallen out completely now. Blood seeps from gums, from ear canals, from tear ducts. Purple bruising spreads across your skin as capillaries rupture, as clotting factors diminish, as bone marrow damaged by radiation fails to produce replacement platelets. Yet you rise, yet you move, yet you persist in the fundamental human activity of continuing to exist, despite all contrary evidence, all logical argument, all existential questioning. Something drives you forward, not hope exactly, but its more primitive ancestor, the simple refusal to stop while breath remains, the animal persistence that precedes and undergirds all higher considerations. The day unfolds with slow, painful movement through necessary activities. You drink when water is available. You eat what little your stomach will tolerate. You clean burns when materials for doing so can be found. You reduce movement when energy flags. You rest when exhaustion overcomes. Will, simple decisions, minute adjustments, the ongoing negotiation between what's possible and what's necessary, that characterizes survival at its most basic level. More help arrives, more organization emerges from chaos. Streets are cleared of debris, of bodies, of the material evidence of destruction. Signs are posted with instructions, with meeting points, with the locations of aid stations and field hospitals. Records are created, lists of the confirmed dead, of the missing, of the critically injured transported to medical facilities outside the blast zone. These activities represent attempt to impose order on disorder, to bring comprehensible structure to incomprehensible event, to reassert human systems in the face of their absolute disruption. You participate minimally in these efforts, checking posted lists for names of family members caught elsewhere in the city when the bomb fell, providing your own name to record keepers, documenting survivors, accepting aid when offered but not actively seeking it. Your engagement is peripheral, observational, rather than immersive. A part of you has stepped outside the immediate reality, now watches from distance, as another part continues mechanical participation in the activities of survival. This dissociation, this splitting of awareness into observer and participant, becomes another characteristic of your post-bomb existence. It allows functioning to continue while protecting some core aspect of consciousness from full exposure to unprocessable experience. It creates space between event and awareness that makes continued life possible in the face of what would otherwise be overwhelming. It is both damage and adaptation, both symptom and survival mechanism. Days become weeks. Weeks become months. The war ends. Japan surrenders on August 15th, 1945, after Nagasaki experiences the same atomic destruction visited upon Hiroshima. American occupation forces arrive, bringing additional medical personnel, supplies, scientific teams to study radiation effects on survivors. These teams establish the Atomic Bomb Casualty Commission, which will track the health of Hibakusha, literally explosion-affected people, for decades, documenting long-term effects of radiation exposure, of trauma, of having lived through event horizon, beyond which all previous human experience loses relevance. You are among those studied, your burns photographed, your blood drawn, your radiation sickness documented in clinical detail. Your body becomes data, becomes evidence, becomes case study in the medical literature of atomic aftermath. This transformation from person to specimen is yet another indignity visited upon survivors, yet another layer of dehumanization added to the fundamental dehumanization of having been target of nuclear weapon. Yet many submit to this scrutiny, understanding that their suffering might protect future generations if properly documented, properly understood, properly translated into preventive wisdom. Life continues, altered, diminished, but persistent. You rebuild, as do other survivors, as does Hiroshima itself. New structures rise from ashes, new skin grows over burns, new routines establish themselves in the ruins of old patterns. On the surface, recovery happens. The human capacity for adaptation, for normalization of even the most extreme experience, asserts itself with terrible efficiency. Visitors to Hiroshima years later will marvel at the city's reconstruction, will comment on its beauty, its modernity, its apparent healing. But beneath this surface reconstruction, the silence remains. The silence that fell over Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, that permeated consciousness, that transformed internal landscapes as completely as the bomb transformed physical geography. This silence is not absence of sound, but presence of something that exists in the space where words fail, where language encounters its absolute limitation, where human expression reaches the edge of what can be articulated and falls into abyss beyond. This silence lives in you, as it lives in all Hibakusha. It separates you from those who did not experience the bomb directly, creates boundary no amount of description can fully cross. You carry this silence through reconstructed streets, through rebuilt life, through decades that follow. It becomes both burden and testimony, the weight of having witnessed what should never be witnessed. The obligation to ensure such witnessing is never needed again. The silence never heals, because it is not an injury, but a transformation, a fundamental alteration in consciousness that cannot be reversed, on return from which no path exists. The silence never heals, because healing implies restoration of previous condition, and no previous condition exists, to which one might be restored after experiencing nuclear devastation. The silence never heals, because it has become part of the foundation upon which all subsequent experience is constructed, present even when unnoticed, structural rather than superficial, essential rather than incidental. In this silence, you continue. In this silence, you rebuild. In this silence, you re-enter human community, forever changed by what you've witnessed, by what you've experienced, by what you now know about human capacity for both destruction and survival. In this silence, you carry memory that must not be lost, testimony that must not be silenced, warning that must not go unheeded. The silence that never heals becomes your most profound legacy, transmitted to children born after, to grandchildren who know the bombing only as history, to a world that must understand what happened in Hiroshima if it hopes to prevent repetition. This silence speaks more eloquently than words ever could about what was lost on August 6, 1945, and what continues to be at stake in every moment that humans possess the power to destroy themselves, their cities, their future with weapons that transform light itself into agent of annihilation. The silence that never heals reminds us that some experiences change consciousness so fundamentally that there is no return, only forward movement, carrying the weight of transformation. The silence that never heals testifies that human capacity for horror and human capacity for endurance exist in equal, terrible measure. The silence that never heals insists that memory must serve future as well as past, that suffering must generate wisdom if it is to have meaning beyond itself. In this silence, Hiroshima speaks still.